Ipakikilala ngayon ni Padre Nemesio S.K. ng Kapisanan ni Jesus, pangalawang Pangulo para sa pangangasiwa, ang panauhing tagapagsalita, si Binibining Roselle R. Ambubuyog, na bibigkas ng talumpati sa mga magtatapos. Hinihiling naming lumapit sa gitna ng entablado si Binibining Ambubuyog.
Roselle's life has been one of grace. Despite having lost her sight at a young age, she has maintained resilience that makes her an inspiration not only to those who know her, but also, and more importantly, to the bigger world for the common good. Roselle's path of grace attained for her a place in Ateneo history. B.S. Mathematics 2001 graduate of the Ateneo de Manila, Summa Cum Laude, Class Valedictorian, and champion of the visually impaired. Roselle was determined, even as a child, to be treated no differently. She urged her parents to enroll her in a regular school instead of a special education school. At Batino Elementary School, Roselle was mainstreamed into the regular classes, but also joined the special education classes for the visually impaired, where she and other students took classes in Braille. At home, she received added support in her studies from her loving parents and brothers. At Ramon Magsaysay High School, several caring specialist teachers further helped Roselle hone her skills, particularly in English, mathematics, and the sciences. Ramon Magsaysay laid a solid foundation for her stellar performance in college and up to this day. In college, Roselle was not cushioned from the rigors of academic life. As a mathematics major, she navigated the world of quadric surfaces and vector spaces with the help of children's toys. Using specialized equipment, she analyzed loads of statistical data for actuarial mathematics. She was not even exempt from the physical demands of her PE classes and learned to dance the cha-cha, boogie, and swing. Yet, despite the inevitable challenges of living with blindness in a world that relies heavily on sight, Roselle managed all these and excelled. With the love and support of her parents and her 3 brothers, the unparalleled dedication of her teachers, and immeasurable loyalty of schoolmates and friends from elementary school, high school, and college, Roselle surpassed all expectations, attaining the highest academic honors throughout her schooling. Class Valedictorian of Batino Elementary School in 1993, Class Valedictorian of Ramon Magsaysay High School, Manila in 1997, and Summa Cum Laude and Valedictorian of Ateneo de Manila University in 2001. With a sense of mission and purpose, Roselle pursued a technology-oriented career to help the visually impaired. She designed a system for writing and reading mathematical and scientific notation on Windows-based PCs using 3D digital audio and Braille displays. Roselle's expertise in related technologies led to the development of the first Windows mobile screen reader for touch screen smartphones, which converted displayed content into synthesized speech, magnified text, and braille output. She guided an international team of programmers to develop a talking GPS navigation solution for blind pedestrians. Presently, Roselle is an access technology consultant working remotely from the Philippines for several software and hardware companies in Europe and North America. She provides design specifications for new and existing technologies that enable the blind, partially sighted, and people with learning disabilities to use regular computers and mobile devices. Solid in her faith, Roselle accepted the events in her life and transformed them into grace. She often quotes her favorite biblical text from 2 Corinthians. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. I will rather boast most gladly of my weaknesses, in order that the power of Christ may dwell in me." A true Atenean, a woman for others, and a genuine embodiment of Magis. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Roselle R. Ambubuyog.
Mr. Ernesto Tanmantiong, President Father Jose Ramon Villarin, Father Bienvenido Niebres, who was the university president when I was an undergraduate, Dr. Maria Luz Vilches, Father Nemesio Ke, who was OAA director for 3 of my 4 years as an ASPAC scholar, Dr. Evangeline Bautista, who was one of my math mentors, Dr. Luis Dumlao, Dr. Jonathan Chua, Dr. Fernando Aldaba, members of the Board of Trustees, university administration, faculty, and staff, proud and relieved parents, family members and friends, and above all, the graduating class of 2018, good afternoon, and thank you for the honor of being here to share this momentous occasion with you. 21 years ago, a totally blind girl had no desire to study in the Ateneo, no aspiration to major in mathematics, and no ambition to graduate with honors. Today, I am standing before you as a proud alumna of this great institution of excellence and service. Now, I would like to take a slightly different approach in this commencement speech. Instead of sharing stories interspersed with nuggets of wisdom, I would like to tell you my story first. Let you take from it what you deem to be worth remembering, and then conclude with the insights I gained living this story. I believe that parts of it will resonate with you, even if you are not blind. As I said in my valedictory address in 2001, all of us experience some form of disability. Mine is just more obvious than yours. The life of a blind person has never been easy. By my final year in high school, I was determined to study only in a university where the blind can graduate without being subjected to prejudice and discrimination. I decided the Ateneo would not be the right school for me when I learned that they never had a blind student, unlike the University of the Philippines and the University of Santo Tomas, which became my college preferences. My high school, however, encouraged their top 10 to apply with all leading universities. I agreed to take the Ateneo College entrance test in spite of my misgivings and did not even bother with De La Salle University's entrance exam. Now, why am I not surprised that you find that funny? A couple of weeks before schools started posting their entrance test results, the Ateneo's Office of Admission and Aid requested to meet with me, and I was introduced to the director then, Dr. Manuel D. Jr. He informed me that I passed the asset and could study any degree I desired with a full scholarship. He admitted that they knew I applied also with UP and UST, and that they were confident I would pass their admissions test because, he pointed out, Ateneo's entrance exam is much harder than theirs, and you did very well in the asset. So they wanted to convince me to choose the Ateneo before the other schools got in touch with me. He also told me that the president, Father Ben Nebres, wanted me to consider majoring in math, which was not among the course options I indicated in my application. I told them I was not sure I could handle all the visual aspect of math, the graphs, the charts, and geometric illustrations. I was amazed when he said that they had already done some research into this, and they were ready to purchase special equipment for producing materials in Braille and tactile format. I made no rash decisions. I promised them I would think about their offer and left that meeting still convinced that either UP or UST would be a better choice for me. 2 weeks later, I learned that I was one of the top 50 who qualified for the UP Oblation Scholarship that year. Shortly after that, UST was letting me know they would match whatever the Ateneo was offering in terms of scholarship and special equipment, would pay for a sighted companion to assist me around the campus, to give me a private room to stay in during breaks, and to provide free hospitalization and eye surgery upon request. My parents did not pressure me to choose one school over the others. In fact, my father, who was a consultant working on seismic instrumentation for FIVOLCS, asked his colleagues, some of whom were UP and UST alumni, but none were Ateneans. He asked them for their advice as to which school I should pick, and every single one of them said, Ateneo. For days, I prayed for discernment and guidance, but rather than giving me an answer, I felt like God kept throwing questions at me. What difference would it make for the disability community if I choose UP or UST when their doors are already open to the blind? If I turn my back on the opportunity the Ateneo was giving me, how long would it take for another person with any kind of disability to get the same offer? In the end, it just felt wrong, irresponsible, cowardly, and ungrateful not to choose the Ateneo. And since I knew I was already taking a gamble, I went all in and enrolled as a math major. One of the most valuable lessons I learned in the Ateneo happened early on in my freshman year with Dr. Flordelisa Francisco and Math 21. She informed me that my pre-finals grade was a B+, high enough that I could choose not to take the final exam unless I wanted to try raising that B+ to an A. I assured her I was happy with the B+, even though I was not, especially as I was confident of getting A's in all my other classes that term. She told me to give myself some time to think about it. Intrigued that she seemed to be urging me not to give up easily, I asked her what was the score I needed in the final exam for that A. And she said, 189 out of 200. As you know, a single question in a math test could be worth 20 points. So even if I got all but one problem answered correctly, that may still not be enough. I took the finals and got an A. Much later, I found out that I scored 196 in that test. The 4-point deduction was for forgetting to indicate a hollow point on a graph. Yes, I still remember that. Dr. Francisco was a tough mentor, but also one of the best I had. That was the first of the 5 terms in which I got straight A's. And that A was only one of 49 I got. Yes, I also remember that number, as it annoyed me that I did not make it a nice round 50. That A meant more than the rest, though. Not because I worked hard for it, but because I almost missed it, had it not been for a teacher who cared enough to make me remember why I should always commit myself to excellence and never settle for good enough. My fear that teachers would be discriminatory, condescending, or indifferent towards a disabled student did not become a reality. They knew I wanted to make the most out of my time in the Ateneo, so they did not exempt me from doing chemistry and physics laboratory work on my own. They allowed modifications, like when my father stuck braille labels on lab equipment I could use, or when I brought modeling clay and bendable wires to create rather than draw 3D representations of molecular geometry. There was some preliminary discussion about exempting me from physical education. Then one registration day, they found me in the queue signing up for fencing. They said, "Please, not fencing. You might accidentally kill your instructor." My dad, who was accompanying me that day, said, "That's what I told her when she asked first if there's a class in archery." No worries though, I did ballroom dancing that term, and the instructor survived to give me an A. Students, on the other hand, took a while to get used to having a blind classmate. Someone who became a friend only in my 3rd year told me that initially he resented my taking the tests in the same room and on the same schedule as the rest of the class. Apparently, since I was writing my answers in Braille, which means punching small holes into paper with a pointed stylus, I was, in his words, making noise that distracted others. When he grew accustomed to this sound, however, he admitted I was motivating him to study harder for the exams, saying, "When I no longer hear you make any sound, I realize you're done with the 6-problem math test, but I'm still stuck on number 3. I suppose the other students saw me as a bit of an oddity simply because they did not know how to relate to someone with a disability. There were some who thought that I would be offended if they used words like see and look, until I pointed out that it would sound sordid if instead of saying, "I'm looking forward to seeing you again," they would hit me with, "I'm feeling forward to touching you again." Others, fascinated to hear me talk about the latest film releases, were curious enough to ask me to go with them when they see a movie one weekend. So off we went. I could sense how nervous and awkward they felt, especially when the ticket lady asked me if I was joining them. To break the tension and remind everyone how I could still enjoy the movie despite being blind, I replied, "Yes, I'm with them, but maybe you could charge me just half the ticket price since I will only get the audio and not the visual experience." I explained to my new friends how they could help me watch the film by describing whatever is happening and whoever is speaking. They gamely told me everything in excruciating detail, getting louder and more excited, particularly when describing the fight sequences and the love scenes. We had lots of fun, and I think that was also when they began seeing me in a new perspective, as someone with special needs, but who was normal after all. When it came to my extracurricular activities and joining student organizations, I chose a different path. It started when the Ateneo asked me to meet with young people, children mainly, who lost their eyesight due to cancer, kidney disease, or some other cause, and to help them and their families cope with their altered circumstances. I realized then that I wanted to do activities where my being blind was significant. I worked with organizations outside the Ateneo to train blind high school and college students in the use of specially adapted technologies. I also did some advocacy work, speaking to parents of blind children about sending them to school, and to other school administrators and even to small business owners who had questions about teaching or hiring the disabled. Most of these personal projects were not linked with any student group in the Ateneo, however. There were people then, not knowing about these projects, who criticized me for being part of only a few student organizations and activities when I was selected class valedictorian. I was not aware that graduating seniors were invited to vote for whom they wanted to be their valedictorian. So I was surprised when I was asked to submit my credentials and an essay on a topic I cannot recall anymore. When I heard that it was possible to opt out of the screening process, I decided not to submit the required documents. One evening, I received a phone call from then Associate Dean of Student Affairs, Mr. Rene Salvador San Andres, who told me they were waiting for me to hand in my papers. Not wishing to be difficult, I finally did as asked, and even showed up for the interview with the Committee on Standards. I found out later that not only did I get most of the student votes, but that one of the candidates interviewed, a fellow Summa Cum Laude from the School of Humanities, submitted an essay not on the designated topic, but one titled, "Why I Think Roselle Ambubuyog Should Be Class Valedictorian." This person, whom I've never met during our 4 years in the Ateneo, gave up the chance to be class valedictorian herself and made me see how foolish my reluctance was in this matter. In a conversation with Dr. Quina Lichua, to whom I will always be grateful for teaching me more than just probability theory and statistics, I confessed that I did not want people to think I was selected to be valedictorian because my blindness made me seem special. She assured me that I deserved this distinction for what I had achieved and advised me not to underrate the inspiration I have given to the Ateneo community, for there was much that people can learn from my story. I hope she was right. Much of this speech is a testimonial because I wish to encourage you to do what I have just done, to look back at your life in the last 4 or 5 years and discover the experiences, the people, the insights, the choices that brought you to this point today, and then reflect on how all of these have prepared you for the life and challenges ahead. I was sure I wanted a career in actuarial science and was pursuing a graduate degree in that field when again God made me see that he had other plans for me. I received a job offer from the Vice President of Software Engineering at Freedom Scientific. They are a US company based in Florida and the leading developer of both software and hardware products designed to help people with reading-related challenges such as blindness, low vision, and dyslexia. By this time, I had already received several offers to work for multinational and local companies, but this one piqued my interest because of what they wanted me to do and why they were asking me to do it. One of the most important products they make is a screen reader which is a software application that conveys what text and non-textual information are displayed on the screen to a user who is unable to see or read. This is done through text-to-speech output or as Braille dots simulated using round-tipped pins that are moved, raised, or lowered through holes on the flat surface of Braille displays. It is not the same as virtual assistants like Apple's Siri or Microsoft's Cortana. Through keyboard operations and touchscreen gestures, a blind person can do a lot more with a screen reader. What they hired me to do was to provide the design specifications of a screen reader that can speak and focus on different parts of math and science notations. In other words, my first job needed me specifically because I was both blind and a math graduate. I left actuarial science for what some refer to as the access technology field, a specialized part of the IT industry. Over the years, I have worked on other projects and for other access tech companies abroad, all from the comfort of my home. I have helped develop screen readers for smartphones on different platforms, apps that identify or describe what can be seen in photos, and talking GPS navigation apps that provide pedestrian routes to blind users. Among our customers are the blind celebrities like the multi-talented musician Stevie Wonder, the operatic tenor Andrea Bocelli, and the intrepid mountaineer Eric Weinmayer, who climbed the world's 7 summits. However, what really gives me the sense that I am accomplishing something worthwhile and deserving of the passion I put into my work is the appreciation from ordinary people whose lives have improved drastically because of our products. There is the blind, deaf, and mute girl whose multiple disabilities made it impossible for her to use a mobile phone and communicate with most people, until I designed the Braille interface for the mobile screen readers produced by Code Factory of Barcelona, Spain. She now has friends and is on social media. There are the soldiers blinded in the war in Afghanistan who, despite several psychotherapy sessions, only regained their hope when they were trained to use computers again with our products. There are also the people who were delighted by the color recognition app that we made initially just to give blind people some use out of their smartphone's camera. It turned out that this app, which would describe the colors of an object after a picture is taken, enabled them to sort the contents of their closet and cupboards without asking for sighted assistance for the first time. These days, we have image recognition apps that can do much more for the blind, namely identify coins and banknotes of different currencies, read printed texts like on street signs and book covers, and describe people in scenery. I've discovered that such apps, quite inadvertently, have a sense of humor sometimes. When I ran photos of my pet dogs through one, it correctly identified the breeds of my golden retriever, yellow Labrador, and Rottweiler. But when I showed it the picture of an Ascal, or Aspen mongrel, I could swear it hesitated for a second before tactfully saying, "brown dog." Incidentally, I would like to take this opportunity to ask you to consider donating your laptops and mobile devices to blind people, especially students, when you are ready to replace them with a graduation gift or the new gadgets that would come with your first job. I mention this because I realize blind people won't be your first choice of beneficiaries simply because you may suppose they cannot use regular technology. Well, there are now free, open source, and even built-in screen readers for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, and iOS, so be assured that blind Filipinos will find much use for your old stuff. I would like to spend the last part of my speech satisfying those who are still saying, so where are the nuggets of wisdom we expect to hear in a typical commencement speech? I have a few insights that I would like to expound on a little, and I hope that they can help you see your way better in the future. Number one, man proposes, but God disposes. I think the book of Proverbs explains this best with the verse, "The human mind plans the way, but the Lord directs the steps." I'm not saying that we should forget about free will and just let the Lord shove us towards wherever He wants us to go. Remember that God has designs for each of us that are not immediately obvious. They certainly were not obvious to me when I lost my eyesight at the tender age of 6. Nevertheless, I now have more to be grateful for than to complain about. As you make your plans for the future, have faith in divine providence. And even if some of your efforts lead to a disappointing outcome, trust that the Lord's purpose for that part of your life has been fulfilled. And learn what you can from that experience to gain more wisdom, courage, and strength. Number 2, value significance over success. As you stand at the threshold of your life after the Ateneo, you have dreams of success. Everyone is expecting you to succeed in whatever you undertake. You are Ateneans after all, and this university's reputation will always precede you. And of course, there is nothing wrong with success and wanting it. Just remember that living your life purely for success will leave you vulnerable to the fear of failing sooner or later or feeling unfulfilled in spite of all you have attained. When I decided to study in the Ateneo, I took a risk. When the Ateneo welcomed me as their first blind student, they took a risk. But our choices are not based on the certainty of success, but on the possibility of significance. Promise yourself now that you will always strive to live a life that matters and is worth emulating. Number 3, do not let your vision become a mere delusion. A speech to graduates invariably includes a mention of vision. More so, I believe, if the speaker is blind. Yes, I am blind, not vision impaired, which sounds delusional, or visually impaired, which I suspect is a euphemistic way of calling someone ugly. Seriously though, this is my vision, a better world for people with disabilities on the foundation of equal opportunity, innovative technology, and a compassionate, inclusive society. Does it sound realistic enough not to be a delusion? Yes. A world like that definitely took shape on a smaller scale in the Ateneo from 1997 to 2001. A vision becomes a delusion when you are no longer focused and passionate for it. So do not let yourself be distracted or disheartened. Number 4, face adversity with fortitude and gratitude. Meeting challenges head on with fortitude, which to me means courage plus endurance, needs no explanation, I believe. But what does gratitude have to do with it? One of the first things my blindness has taught me is how to be grateful and not take for granted who and what I have in my life. When I would have wallowed in denial and misery, gratitude that I lost my sight but not my life or my loved ones taught me acceptance and perseverance. when people's prejudice threatened to turn me into a person full of hatred and self-pity. Gratitude for the love and support of my family taught me forgiveness and resilience. So to me, gratitude plus fortitude equals a winning attitude. Always take time to be grateful, letting your thanks flow from your hearts as well as your lips for your parents, mentors, and if you are one of the 381 graduating scholars, your benefactors, for what the Ateneo as a whole has done for you. Speaking of which, thank you, Father Ben, for recommending BS Math for me and trusting that I will fit well in the Ateneo. Thank you to all my teachers, especially those in the math department, Dr. Catherine Vistor-Yu and the others. Thank you to the Ateneo Schools Parents Council for my scholarship, to Father Nemi, Dr. D, and the OAA for taking good care of all of us scholars. Thank you to my parents and my brothers for everything. When in the future you find yourself going against seemingly insurmountable odds, recall how these people didn't give up on you and how much you owe it to them not to give up either. Number 5, hope is your sight, not the light in the dark. I often hear hope being compared to the spark of light in times of darkness, as though hope is something elusive outside of us to be sought desperately. My experiences have taught me that hope is the ability to see there is light despite the darkness. I read that in the Philippines, a predominantly Catholic country, mental health experts say that each day at least 6 persons end their lives, and there are more and more suicides among children and teens. Dr. Queen Ali, who also teaches psychology here, tells me that even the Ateneo, with many kids from privileged families, is concerned with a growing number of students with suicidal tendencies needing counsel. Let me tell you something. My life as a blind person has never been easy, and it just got harder in February last year when my father, whom you have heard me mention several times as I shared my story, died from an accident that occurred within the safety of our home. Not only was my faith in God's benevolence and plans shaken, but also my resilience that kept me bouncing back from every adversity through the years has been tested repeatedly in the last 15 months and 12 days. The pain of losing him was far worse than the pain I felt when I lost my eyesight. When I got off that phone call from the Ateneo asking me if I could be this year's commencement speaker, the first thing I did was not to give my mom the news or to freak out over what I was going to say in my speech. It was to burst into tears because my dad was no longer around to see this day come. He loved the Ateneo, possibly more than I ever had, since he didn't have to prepare for philosophy oral exams and such. He did not stay with me in class, but he drove me to school every day, went into the library to read to me if I had to do some research, and picked me up at the end of the day, whatever time of day that happened to be. Admin and faculty members here today who have been around in the late 90s can attest to this. Papa was seen a lot in the Ateneo. Some even suggested, jokingly or not, I don't know, that he should have received a diploma as well when I graduated. And if I'm counting the years correctly, I think I gave a talk to EN10 freshman students about 4 years ago. So some of you must have seen him too, since he always went with me to my speaking engagements. Just as my father taught me not to let my blindness destroy my life, I refuse to let the disability of hopelessness, this spiritual blindness, ruin me. If you ever find yourself dealing with this kind of disability, have faith that there is light to see. Push your way through the pain, look to others for support, harbor gratitude, and hold on. Well, I do not wish to end on a sad note, so please bear with me for one last insight. Number 6, desire to inspire and serve without reserve. Never underestimate your capacity to inspire and be inspired. You don't have to be extraordinary people or perform feats of heroism. You can inspire as ordinary people, willing and ready to do what is right and just and good, extraordinarily well. Give inspiration in different forms, but remember the most guaranteed way will always be through service. A commencement speech given in the Ateneo will not be complete without exhorting the graduates to continue being men and women for others. So I ask you to be of service wholeheartedly and not to define limits on what you can do and whom you can serve. For this, commit to excellence and do not settle for good enough. You need an A. Especially now with the way things are going, you're probably asking me, are you asking for a miracle? Perhaps. The blind, deaf author and inspirational speaker Helen Keller said, when we do the best we can, we never know what miracle is wrought in our life and that of another. Whenever I ask God for the light of His wisdom, He doesn't give me answers. More often than not, He leaves me with a question. So I would like to leave you with a question also, and hope that you will find in your heart the answer. If all of this, everything that you heard this afternoon, can be done by someone who is blind, then just imagine how much more can you, who are not blind, can achieve. I wish you all the best, dear graduates. Congratulations, and may God bless you always.
Bilang tanda ng pasasalamat at pagkilala kay Binibining Ambubuyog, ihahandog ni Ginoong Ernesto Tanmantiong, tagapangulo ng Lupon na Pangangasiwa ng Pamantasang Ateneo de Manila, ang isang replika ng munting rebulto ng banal na puso ni Jesus na nililok ng pamansang bayani na si Dr. Jose Rizal sa kahoy na batikuling noong siya ay mag-aaral pa sa Ateneo de Municipal. Sa kahoy na batikuling dinilikha ni Justino Cagayat, isang manlililok ng Paite ang replika na ito. Ang orihinal na munting rebulto na inukit ni Dr. Jose Rizal gamit ang isang pantasan ng pluma ay nananatiling nakalagak sa silid ng University Archives.